Okay, this is a real question that is worth asking. This is one that I could see second guessing constantly as you move your way through your planning and purchasing. Should you buy the best, the absolute best creme de la creme camera that you can afford, or should you buy two cameras that aren't quite as good as that camera, but then you'd have two cameras? And what can you do with two cameras? Well, I have been doing productions for over 20 years. I've had a lot of different cameras. I've had camcorders, I've had DSLR, I've had mirrorless, I've got cine bodies, I've done Red, Sony, Canon, Panasonic is where I started out, so I've touched a lot of the brands, but honestly, none of that matters as much as the different types of projects. I've done a really diversely different set of projects for different companies, different live event stuff, for people personally, for tutorial stuff, commercial branding, for film stuff, all these different types of things. And I think that I can offer my 2 cents and it might come of value to you. So let's go ahead and discuss when that is the right decision to get the two cameras that aren't as good as that best camera that you can get, or when it's the right decision to get the absolute best camera that you can afford. This is my opinion, and I want to dig into this. Let's do it.
In a world where nuclear war has begun, vampires fought back in super real 3D.
All right, let's open up with some obvious stuff here, because depending on your situation, some of this stuff will just dictate for you right away whether you should be getting two cameras or one. And I would say immediately, if you are doing live event filming, then two cameras is the way to go. People can dispute me on that, but you don't have anything to edit if you've only got one camera for a live event situation. That just isn't gonna work. You want to have a minimum of two cameras. For me, with live event stuff, I prefer to have 3 and sometimes 4. Eventually, you want to have more cameras. The question is, if you're just getting into this, should you get 1 or 2? And I'm telling you, for live event stuff, you need to have more than one camera. So that's a given. Now, if you're doing commercial stuff, well, I guess we need to establish, are you doing this for money? Or are you doing this for fun? Like, is this a hobby? Because if it's a hobby and it's just for fun, then I would go with one camera. Again, this is just like some obvious stuff out of the gate. I would get the best camera that you could possibly afford, keeping in mind that you need a budget for batteries, lenses, rigging for that camera, tripod, gimbal, all that kind of stuff, which you want to keep in mind if you're getting two cameras as well, but we'll get into that in a second. But get the best camera that you can possibly get if this is just for fun. And your budget is probably not going to be as high as somebody that's trying to do this to make money with it, unless you're fortunate enough to just have enough money to buy whatever you want. And if that's the case, then I don't even know why you're watching this video. Just buy two fantastic cameras and have a good time. All right, let's talk about where it gets difficult to decide. Let's talk about commercial work. Let's say you're doing a commercial for a client. There's many different types of ways to make commercial work for a client. For me, with Trans Am, for instance, I'm making oftentimes anywhere from 10 to 20 plus minute documentaries on builds and products that they're doing. That's a lot different than doing a 30-second commercial, which I also do. I do stuff like that airs on TV. I've got stuff that's just website content. All this is commercial work. This is why I'm explaining these different brackets, from building cars to doctors' offices to election stuff to baby equipment rental company, Baby Quip. They have like 50,000 5-star Google reviews, so they're actually a nationwide seller and stuff. So those commercials air across TV. And again, Canon R5C totally holds up right there with the Red, both my Epic Dragon and I had somebody that I hired bring on a Komodo, which are beautiful. The R5C definitely holds right there with it. Use tons of that footage in those. For professional commercial work, there are different levels to this. An Arri Alexa is what is needed for some customers. And then there's customers that are just starting businesses and making their first video content, and you can get by with a lot less. So you've got to gauge the community that you're in and the type of work that you're trying to get with this. The realistic companies that you're going to start with, knowing that you're still working your way up. And once you cross a certain price threshold, this has become an absolute different game of questioning this than it has ever been. This is why I wanted to make this video, because the cameras have gotten so good that if you can cross around a $1,500 to $2,000 threshold, when you get around that ballpark for any of the brands, Panasonic, Canon, Sony, Nikon, I've never used Nikon, but Nikon's just bought Red, and they have great looking stuff now. They're totally a part of the video conversation. Blackmagic, all these around $1,500 to $2,000 area, right, have fantastic cameras, and past that, yes, they have better cameras that can do more things. Absolutely they do. But you got to understand that for a lot of these clients, they're not going to see the picture difference past that. Now, they will underneath it. Like, it's not pixel for pixel, they're not going to really pick up on it. There's going to be some kind of mojo that they feel about the professionalism of that higher and end stuff. But you got to know that as a camera geek, if you're geeking out on this stuff, that a lot of that is for you, for that type of client. At the higher end, they do know the difference. But on the bottom end, with, you know, mom and pop shops that are opening up and trying to do their first content, and beyond that, you know, there's companies that are starting and they're making a few $1 million, right? And there's still, like, it exploded for them. They didn't anticipate it working this well, their business model, and it is, and they need to make some video content. And they've never had it made. And whenever you're making content, video content for a company that's never had video work done, and it actually looks in that $1,500 to $2,000 price range of camera, if you know what you're doing, they're going to be blown away if you know what you're doing. So I would say get 2 cameras if you can afford it. All these cameras really need to record 4K at this point, by the way. I mean, I'm only talking about 4K. And when you hit this price point, you're at 4K. I mean, nobody's making new HD cameras at $2,000. That resolution is going to allow you to crop in. So you're getting, if you set a camera up on a tripod, you're going to get a couple of shots out of that you can crop in on your edit. Plus, you've got your handheld rig that you're operating yourself. And that is how I have done my projects. That's how I've been able to do the amount of solo work. If you do look at my website, a lot of people don't on this channel, but if you do, and you see the variety of all the work and you actually click on some of it and check it out and listen to what's happening, you see how the conversations are cut together and the A cam, B cam on a lot of the interviews. You know, what I'm doing is I'm setting up, in my case at this point, I'll oftentimes run 2 or 3 cameras on the side in addition to the one that I'm hand holding. So I love having an abundance of footage. That's not everybody. So do take this with, you know, understanding that this is my opinion. But it is amazing to have all those angles at high resolutions that I can also crop in on. It looks like a bunch of people were filming this, but it was just me. That's what multiple cameras enables you to do. And a lot of situations for a lot of businesses, if you're doing product demonstration stuff, they're going to demo this product or they're going to install this product. Or maybe you're working like BabyQuip, for instance, that BabyQuip rental company I talked about. You know, I'm working with kids. If you're working with kids, you can't plan on getting as many takes as you want. Their patience, you're working on their time. Having multiple cameras on that one take that worked out of 20 that you actually got them to come over and not cry, you want to have another angle on that. So multiple cameras, for me, has been the game changer. They are my secret sauce, a major part of my secret sauce to how I've pulled off what you see on my website or the videos that I'm showing now. But, you know, when I'm showing these clips, I'm talking over it. You're not really hearing how it's put together. And that is really why people hire me. It's how I put the videos together. If you actually watch these things and listen to how the story runs along.
We've taken the original color and we've added a larger metallic to it. It is so rich. It's kind of a little more coppery, but we're using the original color on the wheels. So we're going to powder coat the wheels original color. Okay. So the color DNA stays in the new car throughout the entire theme.
I love this gold. Yeah. And I'm telling you, when it gets outside, you're going to see a whole different.
Yeah, it's for sure. Dance. It's going to pop. It'll dance in the sunlight.
Especially with the red trim. It looks amazing. Dude, this really looks good.
Doesn't it?
Looks awesome. For a modern gold, this is it.
You know what? You think about it, how crazy it is that of all the cars that we've built, this is the first time we've ever done a gold car. You know, who knows, this car might start a whole new series. You think about the success the Hearst edition had, the Bandit edition had, the Super Duty editions, all of them sold out.
The 77, back in the 5th Gen series, and the Hearst edition GTO, which were signed by Nate Shelton, chairman of Hearst. When you can say that, hey, there's only 50 of these that exist, or only 77 that exist in the world,
And maybe a lot of those have shipped overseas, so how many are left here in America?
But the way that story weaves and stuff like that, like that's because I have multiple cameras filming so much coverage. I'm all about a lot of coverage. So I'm a huge fan of multiple cameras. I do think in general, it is better to get more like the double camera. But if you already know that you are working for a high-end client and that camera quality needs to be there, then it is what it is. I mean, you got to get the best camera that you can get. If you are filming scripted stuff like where you can control the takes every time, you can definitely get away with one camera. It's nice to have two, but there's lots of points in movies where just one camera is filming. You know, one camera can absolutely work if you can control the situation for all your situations. You get to light it, you get to control when it starts, stop, you have people that are ready to do a bunch of takes, then that's great. Then one camera can be perfect, and you should get the best camera that you can possibly afford for that. It's hard to get enough work doing just that type of project, though. So it's more like the passionate filmmaker person that's going to be in that situation. Music videos. You can get away with one camera, but if you're filming full bands, so not just like mainly a singer, you know, if you're filming full bands, it's really nice to have multiple cameras, because when you do the full band setup, you do shots of people independently, you do shots of full band stuff, you do different setups. Man, they're only going to have that amazing energy so many times. If you're only doing one camera for every take, it's just, you're missing a lot. You're missing a whole lot. It's way more efficient to have multiple cameras running on full band setups, and just getting that, you know, a tight shot and a wide shot at the same time is just so valuable, and it is very different than just cropping in. However, if you got two cameras going and you have the ability to crop in, it's like you got 4 shots. And something I should have mentioned before is that, you know, it's, even though it's on a tripod, you know, another shot angle that you have set up, you can add handheld movement to it. There's really bad handheld movement stuff, but there's really good ones that you can just slap on your footage. There's also a way to do it yourself where it's kind of a different video, but you can film your own handheld movement and then do warp stabilization on it in Adobe Premiere, and then take that motion tracking data and paste it onto another clip that was on a tripod, and then it's going to add all that movement that was in the other shot to it. So that's a quick summary of it. You might be able to figure it out from there. I could do a video on specifically that. But handheld movement to tripod shots totally works. I've done it all over the place on a lot of these music video shots that you're seeing. The situations where getting the most expensive camera that you can possibly get and only having the one camera, those are just less. You know, it's like it's kind of interesting actually, because it's like the higher end it goes, the higher the demand is for the highest quality camera, and in the highest end situations are usually controlled, where you actually do get to do the takes over and over again. So in some ways it almost dictates, you know, what the right move is there. Now, one other question, and it's such a big one that I'm going to address it in another video, but I'm just going to touch it for a second here, is if you do get 2 cameras, should they be 2 of the same camera? Or should they be 2 different cameras that have different attributes? And, you know, do they need to be the same brand? I can color my footage where I can get all my cameras to match: Red, Sony, and Canon. That's what I have in my arsenal now. And I have mixed all of those together, and I can get them to match pretty dang well. I do at this point have 2 Canon R5Cs. It's the first time since my beginning days of getting into video where I have 2 of the same camera. That was something I did when I first started with handycams. I had 2 Sony handycams. Then I had 2 Panasonic DVX 100Bs, which are SD prosumer level camcorders. And one thing I will say is, just because you are using the same camera doesn't mean that all your shots are immediately going to seamlessly match. You still have to make adjustments. So as much as the Canons can match the best and the easiest, it doesn't match on its own all the time, because different angles are taking in different light intensities in the same scene, and your exposure values that you assign for it based on the shadows and the highlights that are happening from that angle, all that kind of stuff. Once you start messing with your exposure, that's going to change how well they match up out of the gate. Your sensors black balance at the time, if you didn't black balance them at the beginning of the shoot, which everyone says that they do, but come on, a lot of people don't. I barely ever that's how unprofessional I am, I guess. I barely ever black balance on set. I just never, you get on set and it's like, let's go, let's get it done, especially as one person. So I don't have somebody black balancing my cameras for me while I'm talking to the clients and getting everyone comfortable and planning out the shoot and looking at where we're going to do interviews for the day and planning out which order of events we're going to do based on somebody running late. Now we have to flip things around, and loading in lights and setting all that up. There's just, that doesn't happen. So things don't always just seamlessly match. So I would say that you don't have to get two of the same camera, but I liked the Canon R5C so much that it just made sense. It was like, for me, especially at the time that I got a second one last year, it was the best option for that price point. And so that's what I already had, I already built gear in that direction, so it just matched with it well. But that's the last thing I'm going to close on, is that if you do get two cameras, and I touched on this a little bit earlier, and I said I'd come back to it, you do have to think about having double of a lot of stuff if you have two cameras. So it's not as cheap as just buying a second body. You can get away with just a couple of lenses. You could have one lens dedicated to one and one lens dedicated to the other. So if you had a 24-70 living on one and a 70-200 living on the other, if you want to get into primes, that's all good. But if you only have a couple of lenses, a zoom just covers a lot more ground and is a lot more realistic. What about your microphones? What about your batteries? You're going to burn through batteries more, and each camera does need its own microphone. And I've gotten really into lav mics, which is fantastic. It's a real way. Audio is the biggest thing that can separate you from being professional and not, and everyone says it, but man, I am telling you, it's one of the hardest things to do as a solo person. You can't like boom them. So the body mics has been a game changer as I've gotten more and more into it. If you're running time code into those with time code generators, something like Tentacle Sync, which is something I have a couple units of, you can do wireless stuff, but I just get scared of signals. I've had bad situations happen with signal interference and not know it because I can't monitor it while I'm also filming and directing, and so I didn't know that was happening with the wireless signal. Whereas something like a standalone recorder like a Tentacle Sync, I also have Zoom F2s, but they don't allow for time code, especially as even the Bluetooth models that do have time code are not as accurate as the Tentacle Sync because they have constant time code generators that are focusing on not allowing drift to happen, because drift does happen. We're getting into the weeds here, but my point is that you do need to think about the sound, the rigging. Do you need two tripods now? What I personally do with my Canon R5Cs is I have one set up as like a cine body. I use something called a cine back. I love that. And then the other one I let live on a Ronin. So it's almost like my own little Ronin 4D. That's the way I kind of consider it. It's just a camera that practically always lives on the Ronin. So I got a gimbal ready to go, and I got a tripod with a cine ready to go. I can pull that thing off and have handheld mode ready to go. That's amazing. Again, two cameras is just amazing. You can even put the gimbal, if you decide to put a Manfrotto plate or whatever your tripod is, put a quick release plate on it, and then you can still slide that your gimbal into a tripod, and then you immediately have a second tripod shot. And just being able to cover the terrain. I mean, if you're recording conversations between people, only one angle is painful, because a lot of times you're going to have somebody's back. You need to be cross shooting for a good edit at a minimum. In general, a conversation would be like 3 angles. You'd have your full wide, you could see kind of all of them in a cluster, and then you'd have cross shooting over the shoulder, so you're getting each person's face. So 3 cameras. So you know, going to one, I mean, you have to have them doing takes. You got to have them repeat it over, and you're going to have to fake conversation that happened when you're just filming their back. That gives you some leeway. But if you have multiple cameras, you can cheat so much more. You can cut to somebody's face, and it's totally later in the conversation, and it made it sound like a way smoother conversation. If you don't have things to cut away to because you've only got one angle, one take, you're screwed. There's just nothing to edit, you know. At best, it's just a choppy edit. I'm not saying you can't come up with something, but come on, it's way better to be able to cut to somebody's face and then cut back to the wide, and you never knew that any time had lapsed. So I'm a big fan of multiple cameras. I think most situations you'll benefit more from multiple cameras. If you are being hired to just film, if you're just the guy that goes out as a camera operator, then one camera makes a lot of sense. One camera could totally be the way to go. In fact, if your camera is not of a high enough caliber, you're not going to get hired as a, you know, run and gun shooter for a day or somebody to come in. And it doesn't have to be a run and gun. You could go in and get really high quality B-roll and light everything and do quality interviews with just one camera, but two is way better for an interview. You could do that, and you're going to be better off because people, you know, when they're hiring somebody for just camera work, there's a good chance they're going to ask you what camera you're using. A lot of companies, like I'm mentioning, they don't even think to ask what camera you're using. All they're doing is they're looking at the work that you have on your portfolio, which I would recommend being on a website, not just uploads to a YouTube channel. It's a lot more professional to have a website. And when they're looking at that, they say, hey, that quality looks fantastic. I want that. They didn't even think to ask what camera it is. Then when you're on set, you know, and you have the camera out, they'll ask about it, and that's all fine and dandy. And they already know the quality that it provides because they've seen your work. But if you're just somebody that only films and you're not editing and you're looking to be hired to film for other companies that will then edit your footage, I mean, that is get the best camera you can get situation. Yeah, I would go with that for sure. All right, guys, I hope you found that of help. And I hope that you have a great time moving forward with planning out your budget. You know, do factor in all the additional things you need with your camera. It is a part of the budget. It's a real thing. Take it from there. I'll be making more videos about all different types of things. So if you want to follow along and learn more specifically about how I'm getting some of these types of shots, lighting, directing, working with clients, just straight up editing stuff, color grading and all that. I do plan to make videos as I can. I stay very busy making videos directly for clients, but I really like working on this channel. And if you gave a like or subscribe, it really endorses the ability for me to like justify I've got to make more time to make more of these because people are really getting something out of it. That means a lot to me if you are. So let me know and take care. Catch you on the next one, guys. Peace.
Movie Voice.